Your Snoke theory sucks.
That's beautiful.
It's something someone would say if they were an experienced, well-accomplished writer and was given the honourable task of writing The Last Jedi, knowing that you've created a backstory for what we're led to believe to be the most powerful person in the universe at this time in the new Star Wars films. Well, nearly the most powerful being. Very true. After watching The Last Jedi and some time has passed, does anyone else look at this picture and think, you arrogant piece of shit? I do. And with good reason. When I saw director Rian Johnson was directing and writing The Last Jedi, I had my doubts. Some of you may know already, I wasn't a fan of Looper. I wasn't familiar with any of his work, so already alarm bells are ringing. But everyone seemed to be talking about how amazing he was, especially Lucasfilm. He's a brilliant storyteller.
You're impulsive, dangerous.
Our job's done here. Let's go home.
Creating clever
Hello there.
and exciting scripts. Filled with plot twists. And in a way, almost reinventing Star Wars.
If you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Jedi is failure.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice.
That's beautiful.
We already had to put up with Rey being able to do everything in The Force Awakens, defeating a trained lightsaber-wielding dark-side Sith-like assassin who's well accomplished in the Force, and then the loss of one of our most beloved heroes in the Star Wars universe, Han Solo. The Force Awakens did have some Star Wars elements. I'll give Abrams his due. Perhaps because Lawrence Kasdan was writing this script, like he wrote Empire Strikes Back, things were implemented in this film in order to create interesting plot twists and enable character development for future Star Wars films to follow. The Last Jedi, of course, subverted all expectations, not in a good way. And your brain started to realize that something was off with The Last Jedi. Instead, I left the cinema feeling like I'd been left in some sort of Star Wars purgatory. Nothing happened to the characters. Well, nothing good. Nothing was answered, nothing of significance was added to the rich Star Wars tapestry except disappointment, sadness, bad ideas, boring plots, and wasted characters.
A little annoyed look to her, Mark.
That's beautiful.
So why did this happen? The fact that this very picture exists only shows me that there's a man who's not only paying attention to all the Star Wars fans coming up with their amazing Snoke theories, fans that are showing a genuine interest and excitement for the next Star Wars movie to come. Your target audience tells me that Rian Johnson himself at this point has created a backstory for Snoke which supersedes everything he's already seen online, so therefore has the moral sort of right and high ground, if you will, to create a picture like this, take a picture of himself holding up Z-Card, then releasing it online to all your potential customers who will be going to watch your movie. Now there's two sides of this which got me thinking. When I first saw this picture when Last Jedi was in production, I thought, here's a man who's interacting with the fans, who kind of got a sense of humour, and knowing this, he knows of what tremendous weight there is when it comes to Supreme Leader Snoke. I didn't pay much attention, but we didn't have to. All that I knew is that Star Wars and The Last Jedi seemed to be in safe hands. But now looking back on this picture, after watching The Last Jedi, after knowing how bad of a movie it was, in nearly every respect, knowing how it exceeded in all expectations of disappointment, and then worst of all, seeing this man attack the very fan base he was creating a movie for, then all respect, what little there was, for Rian Johnson had gone for me. You've got to ask yourself some serious questions here. This is a man who is so confident his movie is going to be some sort of masterpiece, is arrogant enough to post a picture to his loyal hardcore Star Wars fans. Like I said, the audience he's catering for to create a movie where Snoke's backstory isn't even mentioned or hinted at. Instead, he's cut in half by his unbalanced apprentice, an apprentice to him who is weak, a former shadow of Darth Vader, someone who Snoke can manipulate and read his mind and every intent to then have him killed. And what's worse is that this wasn't the climax of the film. If it had built up to this at the end of the film, you could kind of get away with the film as built up to something, yet Snoke was killed off 2/3 of the way in. Now what this says to me is that Rian Johnson not only had no intention of exploring Snoke's backstory, probably because he already looked at the hype and excitement for the character and either got scared or looked at all the amazing Snoke theories from Star Wars fans, people who aren't paid to write Star Wars movies or come up with ideas, and generally couldn't write anything interesting for Snoke. So he decides to kill him off and let whoever is directing the last Star Wars movie to let them fill in the gaps so Rian Johnson doesn't have to. Quite honestly, this is something I should have let go a long while ago. But looking at this picture long enough, it still makes me feel sick. Inside, resonating deep within me, I feel disgusted that someone has been hired to write what potentially should have been the most important Star Wars movie in the new Star Wars trilogy, to them having ruined it completely, basically sticking his middle finger up to the fans on multiple occasions. The worst being was when Snoke was killed off, after not explaining his backstory or character whatsoever. This whole subverting expectations saying it's not the same for creating Star Wars moments which fans wouldn't expect. It's complete nonsense. It's a phrase used to hide and cover up the complete shitpile of a plot he'd written for The Last Jedi. And anyone who congratulated him and Lucasfilm praised him for it being amazing clearly didn't understand and still doesn't understand Star Wars, what it's all about, what it represents, how it's meant to connect with the audience, what they would be expecting in the movie and looking forward to see watching this film. It's a complete and utter joke. Supreme Leader Snoke was a character set up in The Force Awakens, who was the most powerful being in the universe at this time. He uses the dark side, and from what I last remember, Luke and Anakin, Darth Vader, brought balance back to the Force in Return of the Jedi by destroying the Sith and the Emperor. So already the fact that this Snoke character has been created with Luke and Anakin's previous actions in Return of the Jedi in mind and exists in the new Star Wars films, then you must have one hell of a backstory in order to not insult the existing story before it. If Snoke's character isn't explained, then it's not only insulting to your film, it's not only insulting to your own imaginative capabilities, but it's also insulting to the previous Star Wars films that came before it. Because of Rian Johnson, Snoke's character hasn't a backstory. The great task of creating something interesting for your movie, something that will explain who this person is, where his power came from, and not relying on books and novels after the film to fill in plot holes and all that crap. Though in the case of The Last Jedi, the whole movie is one big massive plot hole, was thrown out of the window.
Beautiful.
Instead, this picture signifies him not giving a shit about his character, but in turn, not giving a shit about the other Star Wars movies, and therefore not adding something new and interesting in the Star Wars universe. He took the quick and easy way out, so he didn't have to carry the burden of not creating a good enough Snoke theory. However, you could argue that the Emperor didn't have a backstory in the original Star Wars movies, and we didn't know anything about him, and not much about the Sith, so why do we need one for Snoke? And I'd say, yes, you're right, but I'd also say, why are you sticking up for Rian Johnson's actions? Why are you sticking up for this abomination of a Star Wars movie? When thinking about this question, equally you have to think about what the fans had in terms of Star Wars content back in those times, as well as how brand new everything was. It pretty much was just the Star Wars movies. Each of the original movies back then could get away with introducing something new without having a huge backstory, because we didn't know much about the Star Wars universe. The Sith weren't really explained, so it worked in those films. But now Star Wars is well and truly established. There are infinite stories, novels, books, games, TV shows, and Star Wars movies which explain everything about the Star Wars universe. So how are we meant to believe, after knowing all of this character Snoke, who is more powerful than Darth Sidious and Darth Vader, slipped by our knowledge and in secret built up this all-powerful mighty force stronger than the Empire, the First Order, and Starkiller Base? Sorry, I'm not buying it. I was buying it before The Last Jedi because these questions could have been addressed in this movie, but Rian Johnson, but it wasn't. It was cast aside and ignored, therefore ignoring the fans. It just screams lazy storytelling.
No, they're biohexacryptin re-scrambled every hour. They're biohexacryptin. No, they're biohexacryptin and no. I know, biohexacryptin.
It's beautiful.
So in conclusion, this picture says it all to me. If you delve deep into it, what it represents, what was going through Rian Johnson's head when he made this, or did someone else perhaps make it and got Rian Johnson to hold it up? Regardless to how it was made, he still held it up, which makes him accountable. He still got someone to take the picture. He still made the decision to send it to the Star Wars fan base, almost boasting that no one could write as good as him. And once you do that, then you better have got an amazing Snoke theory yourself. Otherwise, you're fraud. If anything, he should have held up a warning picture. Something like this. Prepare yourself for subverted expectations, because I don't understand Star Wars. Basically, his treatment of Snoke has been insulting to J.J. Abrams and insulting to the Force Awakens film. As a film, The Last Jedi distanced itself away from its other Star Wars movie counterparts. By creating a subverted film, it's completely missed what Star Wars means and why it's been so popular. How this was approved by Lucasfilm. How he was able to release this picture with the knowledge now that he didn't do anything with Snoke's backstory or story as a whole, we will never know. All that we do know is that these people are still in Lucasfilm creating Star Wars movies and still have creative sway in what happens with the future of Star Wars, and to me, that's worrying. So it's kind of funny in hindsight looking back in this picture. A man who was so confident in his Star Wars movie. He didn't come up with a Star Wars theory himself. He didn't come up with a Star Wars backstory. Yet he still had the nerve to upload this picture. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. You could take it two ways. It could be quite funny, but also it could be quite serious. That no one picked up on this in Lucasfilm. No one picked up on the fan hype. Amongst many things, this is one of the things that annoyed me the most with The Last Jedi. Not only the complete destruction of Luke Skywalker's character, but the fact that Snoke was completely ignored. Why should we let it go? We shouldn't have to. Every time someone mentions The Last Jedi, I just think of how disappointing the film was. So when looking at this picture, it just reminds me of all those things. But what did you think of this picture? Do you read into it as much as me? What does it mean to you? Write all your comments in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if not already, consider subscribing to Skyman Universe for more videos like this. Take care of yourself, and remember, the Force will be with you always.